Welcome back, everybody. This Week in America. Thank you for being with us on the program. Information on the show, of course, available at our website, thisweekinamerica.us. Talking about the new book, The Follower, an Indestructible Hero Fights for His Country by John Durbin Husher. John has his degree in electrical engineering from the University of Pittsburgh, but has spent the last 45 years as a solid-state physics scientist, leading the world in integrated circuit development and production. He's established the technology in several companies, spent the last 20 years as vice president and general manager of Micro Semiconductor, a prolific author of a number of books. We'll talk about those on the program today, specifically, though, talking about The Follower, an indestructible hero fights for his country. The guest on the program is John Durbin Husher. We'll give you information throughout the program on John's website and where you get information on the book. John, it's a pleasure to have you with us on the program today. Thank you for making some time to be with us.
Well, I'm happy to talk to you about The Follower.
Yeah, it's really a fascinating book, and I want to do a little bit on your background, sort of set the table for how you arrived at the topic in The Follower, because it's a fascinating read. And I mentioned that your involvement with integrated circuits, and after college, it really didn't take long for you to make an immediate contribution to the world of electronics, one of the first inventors of integrated circuits with Westinghouse back in, I believe, Pennsylvania at the time. Talk about integrated circuits and what exactly those are, and then we'll make the transition to the book, The Follower.
Actually, all my work during those 40-plus years were on transistors and integrating them into circuits that give you functions in very small size. At the time that I originally did this during my lunch hour back in 1959, it had never been done before. But it immediately took off because at that time missiles by the Russians that they were putting up were huge, and we couldn't put up huge missiles. We put up small ones and satellites, and they were looking for ways to diminish,
Right.
The circuitry that was in the devices. Well, it turns out that what I'd done fit perfectly into that, and it zoomed. After that, integrated circuits were being generated by several companies and took off. Although my work during those years it was in electronics, I liked to read about medicine. So it was like my avocation. I read medical books and about medical people and issues and how they were cured and what have you. And that got me into writing actual nonfiction books about medicine, stem cells, that type of thing. During that time, after about 7 books like that, I realized I ought to write something that's fictional. But I use something that I've learned, and I expand on it and make this hero. He's born with special parts of his body that eventually, although he teaches biology at the University of California during his everyday life, he's called upon by the agency as the follower to actually go into special cases that they have difficulties with and can't solve. But he has these special strength talents, mental talents that have him able to go in, be part of what's being done, actually add to their bad things they're doing, until he realizes that in each one of these that he's reached an extreme where it's going to end up with death.
Yeah, and he ends up dealing with terrorists, with espionage, drug cartel in Mexico, pirates in Somalia that we'll touch on in a second. It's the story of Axel Tressler. And there's an interesting beginning, an accident at birth. His mother, Virginia Tressler, is on an airplane flight to go to Boston to spend some time with her husband. It's about a month before before Axel is born. Talk about that, because there was an accident at birth, and then we'll sort of take it from there.
There was an accident in the plane. She was pregnant, and the accident occurred up in northeastern Pennsylvania in the woods. And his twin brother was born right after the accident. There's only 3 people that got out of the accident, and his mother happened to be one. Turns out that they didn't get him out of the woods until 3 days later, and that's when Axel was born, 3 days later. And they didn't know anything different. He didn't seem any different. It didn't turn out, it didn't happen until he was in his late teens that they started to notice that he had spatial strength. And later on, the doctors analyzed his body, and a normal person is born with these energy cells around her in each cell that convert oxygen and food into your energy that you eat. Those are called mitochondria, the cells. And turns out that the average person has 200 to 400 to 800 in that range. And to give you an idea, what do they call them? The little birds with the wings, they have 10,000. And it turns out that Axel has 5,000 mitochondria in every cell. And eventually, he realizes that he gets very energetic every once in a while when he gets excited, and he starts breathing in air. Well, it turns out his mitochondria is asking for more oxygen and more food. And he carries with him always candy bars he always eats. But anyhow, eventually the agency takes his talents and makes it even greater. They put a computer inside his body so they can call up different levels of this energy, and they cover his body with a special invisible type of covering that's impervious. You can shoot bullets at it, it's impervious. And anyhow, he has a normal life. He has to eat more than the average person, and sometimes he gets excited, as I mentioned. But he teaches biology, University of California, and then they call upon him for such things as going down to Mexico to attack part of the Mexican cartel, the drug cartel. That happens to be one of his specifics he sent on. And these kinds of things, over the course of, the 4 books I've written cover like 10 years, where he's asked to go and do something unique that they cannot handle. And he's able to do that.
What's interesting is he is virtually indestructible. Talk about that. Described as sort of like it's transparent body coating, sort of a spider webbing. Talk about that, and then tell me if that's possible. Is that conceivable that someday we could
possible.
Have that?
It's just improbable. It's, for instance, in the case here, to cover his body cost several $1 billion. So they couldn't just make this and do it for a lot of people.
Right.
He's the only one they did it for at that time.
The book is called The Follower. And there's Follower 2 and 3. The author is our guest in the program, John Durbin Husher. The book's available all across town, the country, at the usual places, Amazon, BarnesandNoble.com. Information at jdhbooks.com. That's John's website, John Durbin Husher. jdhbooks.com. You go to our website, thisweekinamerica.us, and link on directly. If you go to John's website, you'll get information on this and a whole number of books that John has written. Let's mention some of the assignments they send him on and what he's able to do. I mentioned in the book starts off in talking about Somalia with the pirates, something sort of ripped out of the headlines of a few years ago where that was an ongoing situation. Talk about some of the very delicate situations that he gets thrown into to try to resolve.
Well, for one big one was the agency believes that Iran is working on a special weapon, and they believe that the Russians are going to help them. And so one of the things he does is they fly him over to Afghanistan, and the Russians' plane who's going to go to Iran lands there in an airport, and he has people that eliminate whoever the driver was of the car and what have you that picks up the Russian, and he is in the car. He can speak 10 different languages, and the Russian gets in the car and they talk about what he's going to do for Iran. And since the Russian believes he is from Iran, he openly talks about it. And so he gains what he can. Eventually, they take the Russian and they take him away and they put him in a stockade, basically. He ends up going to Iran as the Russian and going up into the mountains of northern Iran, not far from that huge body of water that's up there. And he spends months there, during which time he learns what they're doing. He learns from them, and he teaches at the same time. So in every one of these adventures, he adds to their capabilities, makes them worse, until eventually, this one in Iran, for instance, on a given Saturday when nobody's in the plane, he goes in and gets rid of the guards so they don't get hurt. He plants bombs, essentially. He goes and gets there's a small airport about 3 miles away. He goes, gets an airplane, flies away, and while he's flying away, pushes a button, it blows up that whole laboratory with all these capabilities they built over these years, actually, right?
Yes.
And he ends up going back into Afghanistan and landing, and they eventually get him back into the United States. So that's a typical type of action that he goes through in every one of these.
And this is available in the book The Follower. This is the first of the series, The Follower, the story of Axel Tressler. The book is written by our guest on This Week in America, John Durbin Husher. Book's available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, at John's website, jdhbooks.com. Information you can link on and get directly by going to our website, thisweekinamerica.us. It's interesting, too, because there aren't that many people that are aware of his ability, right? It's like a select group of people that understand the special powers that Axel has.
Yeah, again, all the medical things I read over 40-some years allowed me to think about what is actually something that could happen.
Yes.
And if it happened, what would be the results? And in this case, he's born with a huge number of mitochondria. And like a hummingbird, like I mentioned, has 10,000 mitochondria per cell. And the average person has 200 to 800. He's born with 5,000. And again, this gives him a capability of being able, when he's excited, to take in, breathe fast and take in oxygen, which goes to the mitochondria, and he has to have enough food in him. The combination gives him fantastic energy. Well, the agency sets it up so he can say special things and call up energy 1 or energy 2 or energy 3. each one being more powerful. And he doesn't have to use more than number one most of the time. And only on a special occasion, near death or whatever, does he call number three. So he has the capability of being able to call into, activate his mitochondria at these different levels, which give him different levels of energy capability.
And he is in so many different situations, and as I'm reading, I'm like thinking, why isn't this a movie? This has all the elements of an excellent movie or TV series. Has there been any talk about turning The Follower into a movie or into an ongoing series?
He's an ideal one to go into a movie. Reason being, here you see him every day, and he looks normal. In fact, he's so normal, and as I mentioned, he goes and helps wherever he goes, ends up destroying it. But whenever, for instance, he goes to Mexico and wants to get involved in the cartel in western Mexico, they say, what do you know about it? He said, what do you call, and he'll give them a name of somebody in Pakistan. And the people in Pakistan, all they ever saw was this bright guy doing all these good things. They never saw the follower who destroyed it all.
Right.
So the ones that are over there doing their normal business and everything, they always say, hey, this guy was over here and he was doing these fantastic things, helping us, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that always happens. He's always able to use as reference every time he was in some action elsewhere, because there's always people that saw him doing good.
Yes, and you...
So he has that capability as using as reference the actual places he went and destroyed.
Yes, he can back all of that up and use them basically as sort of references, and you've got to weave all of that together. How long did it take? Let's start with the original, the first, the Follower. How long did it take for you to put that story together? Because it's a very intricate story.
It's unreal. I'd written books, and it turns out when I write a book, I sit down and start writing it. I don't know what I'm going to write about. In fact, when I go back and read the books later on, I say, how did I think of that? How did I think of that?
So you enjoyed them too when you read them.
That's what happened with The Follower. I sat down and start writing about it, and each one of these action things appeared and came, and for whatever reason, I was able to write through them. So the Follower books I wrote from 2007 actually, to 2009. And so 3 years I wrote those. In the meantime, I'd written a couple other books. So for whatever reason, I'm able to sit down and write. And even when I send it to the editor and they edit it, it comes back, there's not much I have to change. A comma here or a apostrophe there. Because I have an English language of Western Pennsylvania, which is not too good, I actually can write well.
Yes.
Can't speak well, but can write well.
Well, you write very well in the series The Follower. A couple minutes left in the program. The book is The Follower. All 3 books are available at Barnes & Noble, Amazon, at John's website, which is jdhbooks.com. Our guest is John Durbin Husher. The book series is called The Follower. And it's got elements of the relationship, romance in there as well. A couple minutes left in the program. Explain Tori, who she is.
Well, it turns out he meets Tori one time when he's in the evening working at the college. He's writing a book, it turns out, about something. And he hears her screaming, and he ends up running down the hall and down onto the second floor. And it turns out there's two guys brutalizing two girls who had come out of a late evening lab around 7 o'clock in the evening. And anyhow, he ends up wiping them out. And they can't understand how this young guy did what he did. But the next day, when he's in the evening working on his technical work for the school, she comes, Tori, which was one of the girls. She comes to see him. And so they learn how to get along well together, and she doesn't know of his other capabilities. And this goes on through book 1, and it isn't until book 2 that they really get involved, and they get married by book 3. And they don't have any children by book 4, but it's almost that direction.
Well, it's a fascinating series. The initial book we're talking about specifically today, The Follower and Indestructible, and I emphasize Indestructible Hero, Fights for His Country. It's written by John Durbin Husher. It's the first in the Follower series. Books are available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble. Information available by linking on at our website, thisweekinamerica.us. And, of course, information on John and his other books. There are a number of other fascinating books at the website, jdhbooks.com, for John Durbin Husher Books.com, jdhbooks.com. And again, like I say, if you go to our website, thisweekinamerica.us, you'll be able to link on directly to John's website. John, I was really enjoyed having the chance to read The Follower. It's an excellent series. I love the background that you've had, and I keep trying to think that, I would put this in the science fiction category, yet this could actually happen. It's all based in some form of reality out there. Thank you so much for being with us on the program today.
It's my pleasure. You're the only person that ever talked to me about it.
Well, hopefully we'll get some people to go and check the books out and read them, because you are going to enjoy them. I love the whole concept of what you're doing, and actually someday we'll see this either on the small screen as an ongoing series, or we'll see it hopefully on a movie. It's called The Follower. This is the original book we're talking about. An indestructible hero fights for his country. We're talking about Axel Tressler. And the author, John Durbin Husher, has been with us on This Week in America. Again, information available. Link on to John's website by going to our website, thisweekinamerica.us. We're taking a break. We're right back after these messages.